Hello boys and girls, this is Mr. Kizik, and in this video we're going to be looking at your homework first on trig ratios and finding missing sides using trig functions. And then today we're going to be talking about, well, how do we find missing angle measures? And a couple word problems. But before we get to that, let's look over the homework. So with number one, you had to, first of all, find the missing third side here. You're not just going to label it as x, you're actually going to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for it. And you do get 48. And then now we're going to do the trig function. So sine of q, remember, sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so it's 14 over 50. But then you got to simplify the fractions, so 725. Cosine of q is adjacent over hypotenuse, so 48 over 50, which reduces down to 24 over 25. And last but not least, tangent of q is opposite over adjacent, so 14 over 48, which is 7 over 24. And that was the same concept for the angle R. And then for the rest of it here, it was finding the missing side using the trig functions. And remember, to do this, you want to figure out, or you want to look at, what's the relationship of the side with the given angle. Not the 90-degree angle, but with the given angle. So here, x is opposite of 48, 17 is adjacent. So the trig function I'm going to use is tangent. So tangent of 48 equals opposite x over adjacent 17. Since x is on top, we multiply and we get around 18.9. Whereas, say number 4, 12 is opposite of 29. X is the hypotenuse, so I use sine. Sine 29 equals 12 over x. Since x is on the bottom here, that just means we gotta divide. So 12 divided by sine of 29 gives me 24.8. Alright, so look at this, look at these problems here, pause the video if you need to, check your answers here. And if you got questions, ask a classmate or just let me know. Alright, so once you're done looking at this here, I want you to turn the page. So turn the page, you're on page 3, so turn page 4 here. And I just want to look at a couple problems. I guess I would say a little more challenging, and some problems that are likely on the SATs. You know, that 1% of geometry that's on there. So for number 12 here, they want you to find DC, which is this line right here. Just like the special right triangles, where you have find the shared line in order to get the other triangle, same thing here. I need to find this shared line, the measure of the shared line, so that I can use it for the other triangle. So what I'm going to do here is identify the side in relation to the angle measure. So what is 20 in relation to the 54? It's the hypotenuse, right? It's opposite of 90. What is this shared line in relation to the 54? That's the opposite. So what trig function deals with opposite and hypotenuse? Sine. So I would have sine of 54 equals opposite, we'll call that y here, over hypotenuse 20. Since the variable's on top, we're multiply. So 20 times sine of 54. Put that into our calculator, and that's going to be roughly 16.2. Alright, so this side here is 16.2. Now we can use that to get x here, DC. So again, what is 16.2 in relation to 28? Happens to be it's also the opposite. But what is x here? That's the adjacent. So which trig function deals with opposite and adjacent? Tan. So tangent of 28 equals 16.2 over x. Since x is on the bottom, we divide. So x is going to be equal to 16.2 over tangent of 28. We put that into our calculators, and I'm going to see what we're going to get here. Hold on one moment while I put it in. So 16.2 divided by tangent of 28. And that's going to be roughly around 30.5. Right. Let's get to number 14. So a word problem using trig here. So it says a wire, actually instead of doing 14, let's go with 15. because some vocabulary here that I just want to make sure you guys understand. So an airplane climbs at an angle of 12 degrees from the ground. So I'm going to draw that here. Now here's my airplane. So it is 12 degrees from the ground. So it looks something like this. Here's 12. We want to find the horizontal distance. Remember, horizontal is going to be down here. We're not looking for the diagonal here. I wouldn't measure that. That's not really a measurement to help me find something with the plane. So what the next part says, altitude, that's also, the diagonal is not the altitude of the plane. The vertical part right here is the altitude of the plane. So my setup looks like that, and now let's identify what we have. 500 is the opposite, x is adjacent. So we have tangent. Tangent of 12 equals opposite over adjacent. X is on the bottom, so we divide. 500 divided by tangent of 12, which is going to be, my phone keeps going off here. So I'm going to have 500 divided by tangent of 12, and I get that this is around 2,352.3 feet. So that's how you work with word problems and just multi-step triangles here. If you need more practice, I would then try number 13 and number 14 and see what you get. Alright, so today's main lesson, and then after this you get to do your homework, is if you turn the page here to where it says inverse trig ratios and finding missing angles. So we're basically doing the opposite here. Before we were finding the missing sides, now we're trying to find the missing angles. But the process is still the same. We're still going to identify opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse sides and still set up the same way. So if I look at number 1, what is 15 in relation to, now in this case here, we don't have the angle, but it still is an angle. So what is 15 in relation to x? It's the opposite side. What is 24? It's the hypotenuse. So, which trig function deals with opposite over hypotenuse? That would be sine. So I'm going to write sine x equals opposite over hypotenuse. I could reduce the fraction if I wanted to, but there is absolutely no need to do that. Because if you remember what we talked about, each trig function with its angle measure is always equal to the multiple of that ratio. So like here, if I did simplify this, this would be what? 5 over 8? So every multiple of 5 over 8 will only correspond to the sine of this one angle measure. Only one of them. Alright, so there's no reason to simplify it here. So how are we going to get x though? Because now x is with the trig function. A lot of misconception is that a lot of students tend to just divide each side by sine, and then they got x equals 15 over 24 divided by sine. That doesn't make sense. Because sine goes with the x. It's sine of x. They're not separate pieces. So think back to when you took Algebra 2 honors and you learned about inverse functions, essentially. Where if I had, let me just put it to the side here. I don't need to write this, but we're just talking about it. If I had like the natural log of x equals, making up something here, 5. You couldn't divide each side by a natural log. You did what was called the inverse. You raised each side to the power of e. And what happened was this kind of went away and you got x equals e to the 5th. That's kind of what you're doing here. You're raising each side of your equation to the inverse of that trig function. So technically what you're doing is this. Sine to the minus 1. Sine to the minus 1. Because what happens is the signs go away here, and I'm left with just x. So x equals inverse sine of 15 over 24. And you literally just plug that into your calculator. So again, make sure your calculator is on degree mode, and you are going to do, let me just show you here. So inverse sine. Sometimes call it arc sine. It means the same thing. 15 divided by 24 equals, and I get around, it is around 38.7 degrees. So this is around 38.7 degrees. All right, let's look at an example. Number 2. What is 8 in relation to the x? That's the adjacent side. What is 11? The hypotenuse. So which trig function deals with adjacent and hypotenuse? Cosine. So cosine of x equals adjacent, 8 over 11. X is now with the trig function, so we take the inverse cosine of both sides, and we get x equals inverse cosine of 8 over 11. So in the calculator, you're going to do inverse cosine 8 divided by 11, and you're going to get 43.3 degrees. Yeah. And that's how you do it. You just, you just basically do the same thing you've been doing, except you're just using a new key on the calculator. All right. If you need to, maybe try 3 and 4 for yourself and see what you get and check with your neighbor. Otherwise, you can get started on your homework. And your homework is going to be, if you turn to page 7 here in your packet, I want you to do the front and the back, just the evens. Okay? So again, your homework is going to be the front and the back, page 7 and 8, just the even problems. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to ask one of your classmates or email me. This is Mr. Kizik, signing off.